Hey Precalc! So we've been solving equations for the last couple of days in class. This is your first set of notes on this. When we look at a problem with fractions in it, the trick that I've been trying to get you guys to adopt and really pay close attention because it just makes your life so much easier is fractions. Or at least that's what I'm calling this. You could also call it multiplying by the least common denominator. That might be a better name. Let's call that multiply by the least common denominator, the LCD. So in this case, the least common denominator is going to be x times x plus 2, because those are the two things in the denominator. So I'm going to multiply both sides of the problem by x times x plus 2. Okay. Now when I do this, I'm going to get 3x times x plus 2 over x, 5x times x plus 2 over x plus 2, and 2x times x plus 2. Okay. So notice here I'm just distributing the x times x plus 2 to the 3, distributing it to the 5, and multiplying it on this side. The nice thing about getting rid of the denominators by multiplying by the LCD is that when you multiply by the least common denominator, just on the tops, things start canceling out. For instance, x over x cancels, x plus 2 over x plus 2 cancels, and then here, since there's nothing in the denominator, there's nothing to reduce out. So now that the denominators are gone, I can just FOIL or distribute the 3 into the parentheses, so 3x plus 6 plus 5x equals, and then on this side I get 2x squared plus 4x. Okay. Since this is a quadratic, I'm going to need to get 0 on one side, so I'm going to leave the 2x squared there and group my other terms. Now let's see, 3x and 5x is 8x. And if I take 8x away from both sides, so I'm going to subtract 8x away, then 4x minus 8x is a negative 4x, I believe. And then I'm going to take 6 away from both sides, and that will give me 0 on this side. So if you guys need that, I took away 8x from both sides after I combined like terms. And then I took 6 away from both. Just doing some work in my head there. Now I have all even coefficients, so I know I can divide a 2 out, because as long as I do the same thing to both sides, dividing by 2 doesn't change the problem. And now this guy's way easier to factor. So let's see, I need two things that multiply to negative 3. Well, it's got to be a 3 and a 1. And they have to add up to a negative 2. Well, that means the negative 3 had to be bigger. So that tells me my answer here is x equals 3 or x equals negative 1. Okay. So clearing the fraction, you multiply by the LCD, and then your denominators will cancel out, which is nice. Let's do this again just for practice. So the LCD here isn't quite as obvious until you factor. When you see this 3x plus 3 here, you should always kind of be on the lookout for being able to factor the bottom. So this guy's going to get factored. Now when I factor it, I get x plus 1. So now when I'm looking for the LCD between 2 and 3 is 6, because 2 and 3 both go into 6. And then the LCD for the rest of the polynomials is x plus 1. Okay. So I'm going to multiply through by 6 times x plus 1 on both sides. When I do this, here, the x plus 1s are going to cancel, and 6 times 3 is going to give me 18. When I distribute 6 times x plus 1 in here, the 6 and the 2 will cancel. 6 divided by 2 is 3. But the x plus 1 doesn't cancel because there's no x plus 1 on the bottom of this fraction to cancel it out. And then over here, let's see, 6 divided by 3 is 2. And on this side, so now I get a nice problem where I have 18 minus 3x minus 3 equals 2. Let's see, 18 minus 3 is 15, so I get negative 3x plus 15 equals 2. I get negative 3x equals, let's see, when I take that away, I get a negative 13, I believe. So x is 13 over 3. Okay. By the way, if this problem looked familiar, it is one of the problems out of your homework. I just wanted to make sure that you guys saw it using the trick of clearing the fraction or multiplying by the least common denominator, because it's such a handy trick. It is especially handy on example number 3. By the way, even if you cleared the fractions in the problems today in class, I still want you to write this down in your notes. Your homework will probably eventually get recycled. Hopefully your notes will stick around for a little bit longer. So even if you did it this way in the homework or in the class today, I want you to still write it down. So this problem should look familiar from classwork. We're going to multiply by the LCD, and in this case the LCD is root 3 because it's the only thing in the denominator. Now when I do that, on this side the root 3's cancel, one on top and one on bottom cancel out, leaving me with x plus 5. And on this side, root 3 times root 3 gives me 3, because root 3 times root 3 is root 9, and the square root of 9 is 3. And I have an x from the problem there. And then the square root of 3 times the square root of 12 is the square root of 36, but the square root of 36 is just 6. So notice, multiplying by the least common denominator got rid of this root 3 on the bottom, but it also beautifully got rid of the square roots everywhere else in the problem, turning it into just a straightforward linear equation. So now if I take x away from both sides, I get 2x. If I take 6 away from both sides, I get a negative 1. So x equals negative 1/2. So if you haven't been already, please give a couple of problems a try where you are multiplying by the LCD. It will save you some time and a lot of headache. The only other thing you need for your notes that we're going to be working on tomorrow is solving, oops, that's not the piece of paper I wanted, this is the one I wanted. Solving by completing the square. Oh, completing the square, your favorites. I know you love it. So if you recall, completing the square, the first thing you want to do is get rid of the constant term. So x squared minus 8x, I'm going to leave a spot there, equals negative 13. So you're going to isolate the ax squared minus bx. And then you're going to take the b, so which is negative 8, you're going to divide it by 2 and square it. So negative 8 divided by 2 is negative 4. Negative 4 squared is 16. This is the number you are going to add to both sides. Okay. So negative b, or sorry, not negative b, just b over 2, and then you square it, and that's the number you add to both sides. Now, on the right-hand side, negative 13 and 16 makes 3. On this side, we now have a perfect square. Notice that if I were to factor this, I get x minus 4 times x minus 4, because I get x times x is x squared, a minus 4x and a minus 4x is a minus 8x, and this really just gives me a plus 16, which means it really can be written as x minus 4 squared. Now, if I'm trying to solve, this is kind of nice, because the way that I cancel a square out is I square root both sides. So I get x minus 4 equals plus or minus root 3. Don't forget your plus or minus. And then you add 4 to both sides, and you get x equals 4 plus or minus root 3. And there's your answer. Okay. So you take move the 13 out of the way, the constant term, get it over to the right. Half of the middle term squared is what you're going to plug into both sides. Then you're going to factor, square root, and get x by itself. All right, for part B, it gets a little trickier if you have an a, if you have a number in front of your x squared. So in this case, you're still going to start the same way. We need to get rid of this plus 6. So I'm going to subtract it over, take it away from both sides, and I'm going to leave a gap there for where I'm going to add my term back in. Now, before I take the middle number and divide it by 2, I am going to factor a 3 out. So I have x squared minus 4x plus whatever's going to be in that blank. Okay. Now I take the middle number, so negative 4, I divide it by 2, and I square it. Negative 4 divided by 2 is negative 2, squared is 4. So I add 4 to this side, but when I add 4 to this side, what I'm really adding is 3 times 4 because there's this 3 outside the parentheses. So on this side, I have to add 3 times 4. If I add 12 here, I have to add 12 here. So now I have 3 times, if I factor this set of parentheses, I get x minus 2 times x minus 2, which is really 3 times x minus 2 squared. On this side, on the right-hand side, let's see, I have negative 6 plus 12. Negative 6 plus 12 is a positive 6. And now, to solve, sometimes it's handy to write down PEMDAS backwards, SABMET, because it helps you remember what to do first if you were confused between dividing by 3 or square rooting. SABMET is just PEMDAS backwards. There's nothing to subtract, nothing to add, so I'm going to divide before I deal with the exponents. I'm going in reverse order of operations. So I divide both sides by 3 and get x minus 2 squared equals 2. And now I can square root both sides. X minus 2 equals plus or minus root 2. And add 2 to both sides, so I get 2 plus or minus root 2. All right, that's it for tonight's notes. I know they were a little bit long. Hopefully it was a nice review, though, of multiplying by the least common denominator and also by completing the square. I will see you tomorrow in class. Have a good night, guys.